How's that? There we go. Okay. Howdy, everybody. Luana, great to see you. Ben, nice to have you here this evening. Cheryl's next to me. Who else is around right now? Who do we have?
Can you hit the
Oh,
toe?
no, 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 no,
Cursing
no, no,
should
no,
come
no.
out.
Sorry. There we go. Trying to load up Facebook. Close Oak Park. Geneva Morgan. Is that actually how you spell your name? I'm not. I like it. I just I have never seen it spelled like that, except for when you log in on YouTube. I, did you get a notification from Oak Park? The website? Brilliant. I will do the same. Facebook here, YouTube here, and then mute and mute. Okay. Hey, Debbie, how are you? Yeah, yeah, it was good that Jeff was able to go. And yes, Ben, that is a humidifier. I could no longer handle the dryness in the house. It was killing me. I want to figure out how to leverage. If you're on Facebook right now, there is um, there are captions. So it's taking what I say and it's converting them to captions. And I've got to figure out how to use this in real time in church so that Larry can have right in his hands. It can't be hard, but I don't know how to do it. But anyway, I think that is something that I want to do. So Jennifer, the next time we have and Ben, the next time we have a administrative council meeting, uh, let's talk about that. You can't get YouTube to work. I'm on YouTube and it's working. You said hey there. I don't know. Anyway, if you're here, then all is well. All right. Big group question. Cause I forgot to write down. Does anybody know where we stopped? I'm thinking maybe we're ready for the third chapter. Maybe more. But if somebody knows for sure, that would be really awesome. Let's look at verse 3. Okay, Debbie, thank you very much. I thought that was it, but it's nice to know that I'm right. I don't want to repeat stuff and I don't want to miss stuff. Uh, Let me send you a link. In case anybody needs it. I think this will work. Hey, Jeff, good to see you. Yeah, glad you could be with us tonight. Definitely been praying for you. Okay, there's more volume. Is that better? I can even get it a little bit closer. Okay, I feel like that's probably fixed. I can't hear it, so let me know if it's better or not good enough or whatever, and I will keep looking at it. Thank you. Okay, good deal. All right. Mike Bowman, Mike and Terry Bowman from Indiana. Nice to see you. Jeff is in Illinois. So we have the Midwest well represented. All right. 1 Maccabees 3. So I sent the link. That's my favorite place to go to use online. So we will, without further ado, we'll just get in. Although I will back up just to give us a little bit of context. As Matthias died, he said to his children, "Be courageous and grow strong in the law, for by it you will gain honor. Here's your brother Simeon. I know is wise in counsel. Always listen to him. He will be your father. Judas Maccabeus, the sort of hero of our story, has been a mighty warrior from his youth. He shall command the army for you and fight the battle against the peoples. You shall rally around all who observe the law and avenge the wrong done to your people. Pay back the Gentiles in full and obey the commands of the law." That's harsh. I mean, it wasn't all Gentiles, right? But anyway, he blessed them and was gathered to his ancestors. What a biblical phrase. He died in the 146th year and was buried in the tomb of his ancestors at Modine, and all of Israel mourned for him with great lamentation. That's where we ended, and we're going to move to chapter 3 now. And when it says 146th year, I don't know what calendar they were using, but that's 166 BC. So it's pretty close. Obviously, they're going to be counting down instead of counting up when we talk about BC. But just to give you the time frame of when he died. Nations, not Gentiles. Pay back the nations in full. Yeah. Out of curiosity, I will check the Greek. Hang on. I'm looking for longs. Oh, there it is. This isn't longs, but this is pretty good. Hang on. Weird. Oh. Yeah, my source doesn't have... Hang on a second. I really want to know now. Hey, Sue from St. Joe Mo. How you doing? Interesting. So the Greek word is ethne, which would be the ethnos would have been sort of the neutral version of that word. Ethne would have been the okay. So ethnos obviously comes from, like, the word ethnic comes from that. Ethnos would have been one people, and ethne, which is the word used there, would be plural. So it kind of is saying it's us against the world, which I think is relatively significant to think about that, because that is how they felt. Hey, Terry, good to see you. they did feel like it was them against the world. So sometimes that's all you can do. So, clearly, and again, we're not going to get in deep into theology, but we're going to do some theology. We'll get much deeper into it when we hit Second Maccabees. This is supposed to be giving us context for when we read Second Maccabees, but when we hit things like this that are just dripping with theology, I want to talk about it. So there was this notion, and still is in many ways, that they're God's chosen people, and there are two groups of people in the world, them and everyone else. And I think that's why this word translated as Gentiles, poorly translated as Gentiles in NRSV, very rare, I think, for the NRSV to have a poor translation. Much better translated in whatever version Debbie is using. Nations is a much better word. But that definitely conveys the way that they felt. They totally believed they were God's chosen people and everybody else basically was against them. Now, in their time, that was pretty true. And I would not go so far as to say that that's still the case. I'm sure it feels like it sometimes, but they know that the United States is an ally. And I think they know that other parts of the world are allied with them as well. But there's still a notion, I think, even today sometimes, that it's them against the world. And I hate that. And maybe it's a reminder for us that we're never alone. There are people who are with us, and people know right from wrong. They know when they're doing wrong. And if you're in the right, you don't just have God on your side, you have God's people on your side. So I hope that modern day Israel as a collective knows that and feels that. That's so weird, Debbie. That's exactly what I'm using. I'm on the Catholic edition. Hang on a second. There we go. Silly Catholics. I'm kidding. Yep. Okay. Now I'm with you. Pay back the nations in full. All right. And let's move on to chapter 3. And I hope that is a message for you all as you go through your life. If you're in the right, you're never alone. Yes, but Ben, that's not the question really. It was more of, do they know that we're with them? That's the difference. And to be clear, the non-Messianic Jews, the ones who, are still religiously part of the original tribe of Israel and Israel today, they're not against us. I mean, they don't think that we have it right. They don't think that Jesus was the Messiah. But they're not against us because of that. So that's important to recognize, I think. Yeah, Debbie, I was just on the wrong translation. I've never been on that Catholic version before, so that's why we've never had a difference. I'm glad you mentioned it. And it brought out a good moment of theology. Chapter 3. Then his son Judas, who was called Maccabeus, took command in his place. All of his brothers and all who had joined his father helped him. They gladly fought for Israel. And so now we're going to have another poem. And this is going to be a different poem because this is not going to be a lamentation. This will be the first little bit of poetry that we've come across that's not a lamentation. I'm looking it up because it's interesting. Okay, it's called a heroic. Oh my gosh, I don't even know how to say this word. In encomium. I'll put it in chat. Because I have never seen this word before. Looks like it's going to take a second for it to go through. Lamentations is not totally... So when I say a lamentation, I'm talking about a certain poetic form, Ben. And that's good. We talk about that. So we see them mostly in the book of Psalms, but of course there is a book of Lamentations as well. A lamentation was sort of like a... I'm not sure what your word to use. It was almost a legal document, but of course not, because it's poetry. But it was an official grievance, so you could send somebody a lamentation and say, "This is how you have grieved me, and this is what I think should happen as a result of it." But in this particular, in the biblical case, it's a little bit different. It always started with expressing like a very deep sorrow or a grievance with something that had happened. And then I'm going to simplify it a little bit. There would be a section basically that said, this isn't the first time we've been here. This has happened before. And then it would shift from every time it's happened before, God, you have come through for us. And then fourth, therefore we believe that you will come through for us now. So even if a lamentation and an original one didn't include all of that stuff, it did by virtue of what it was. So even if the lamentation itself didn't say, you saved us before and we believe you'll save us again, it was inherent to the structure of what it was. And the most famous lamentation is Psalm 22, where the psalmist says, my God, why have you forsaken me? Which is what Jesus said on the cross. And so the important thing to remember about that is that at that particular point in history, everybody who was there would have known the Psalms by heart, all of them. The way that some of us know lyrics from 80s songs. I mean, it would have just been, they would have known it. And so when Jesus said, my God, why have you forsaken me? He was quoting the entire Psalm, not just that one line. And the entire Psalm says, I'm not going to load it up and read it and go through it tonight, but the entire Psalm says, maybe I am, just a brief, I'm just going to go to the end. So my God, why have you forsaken me? Why are you so far from helping me from the words of my groaning? And then it very quickly goes into, yet you are holy, enthroned on the praises of Israel. In you our ancestors trusted, they trusted, you delivered them. And then going on down towards the end, from you comes my praise in the great congregation, my vows I will pay before those who fear him. The poor will be satisfied, those who seek him shall praise the Lord, may your hearts live forever. And it finally ends, to him indeed, all who sleep in the earth bow down. All before him bow down, who go down to the dust, and I shall live for him. That's what Jesus quoted on the cross, the whole thing. It was not, asking God why he forsook him. It was the whole thing. It was saying, I know I'm dying. I know it seems like you've left me, but I know that you would never leave me. That's what Jesus says on the cross. So that's what we've been reading so far, are Lamentations. I hope that kind of answers your question. I'm not quite sure off the top of my head what part of Jeremiah that you're talking about. Um, I mean, it basically is the same thing that's in the Book of Lamentations. But anyway, we'll go on. If you have questions, just ask. Yeah, of course. All right, here's the poem. He extended the glory of his people. Like a giant, he put on his breastplate. He bound on his armor of war and waged battles, protecting the camp by his sword. He was like a lion in his deeds, like a lion's cub roaring for prey. He searched out and pursued those who broke the law. And we know they're talking about basically the Levitical law. He burned those who troubled his people. Lawbreakers shrank back for fear of him. All the evildoers were confounded, and deliverance prospered by his hand. He embittered many kings, but he made Jacob glad by his deeds, and his memory is blessed forever. He went through the cities of Judah. He destroyed the ungodly out of the land. Thus he turned away wrath from Israel. He was renowned to the ends of the earth. He gathered in those who were perishing. So what I want you to recognize is that every time we have a poem in the midst of Scripture, and if you're online or even in your Bible, you see that that particular section will be indented. It probably is in italics if you're not online. These sections where you recognize poetry, those are essentially lyrics to songs that they sang, which means they are word for word what was taught down through the years, because that's how you remember things, right? Is through a song. That's why A, B, C, D, E, F, G, the alphabet song is sang to a tune, because you remember things when they're in a song. And so all of these things were music. Most of the Psalms, almost all of them, would have been songs as well. The ones that have the word Selah absolutely were musical. The Selah basically meant refrain. So anytime you're in the Bible, you see a section that's like this, it is either a poetic thing that you can be sure was passed down word for word and is 100% accurate to the, I mean, I would say mythology in some cases. This is history. This is not mythology. This happened. There's no doubt that this happened. So it's very accurate, I guess, is what I'm trying to say. The other thing that you'll see in the Bible when you got little pieces like that, indented and italicized, can be quoting scripture. So in the book of Acts, as an example, when they start speaking in tongues, someone says they're drunk, and I think it is Peter. I could be wrong. I'm not there right now. But somebody says, I think it's Peter, says they're not drunk. It's like 9:30 in the morning. They're quoting the old magic, to steal a phrase from C.S. Lewis, to you. And then they quote from, it's Joel, right? Why does that not even seem, is there a book of the Bible called Joel? Okay. Sorry guys, I don't have it all memorized. Anyway, you'll see that as well. Just important things to know when you're reading your Bible. And if you look, especially if, I think all Bibles have this, but if you have a study Bible, and if you don't have a study Bible, you've got to get one. Talk to me and I'll send you a link between the two that I recommend. You've got to have a study Bible. It'll have a footnote that says where it's from. So that'll be a good hint for you. And since I said this, I don't know who might come by this video at some other time, I am going to go ahead and drop a couple of links for you. So this one is my favorite. If you go to that, it says there's a newer edition of this item, and it's a Catholic Youth Bible. That is not a newer edition of that item. The one I sent you is the one I recommend. You can get a new hardcover for $32. And I absolutely recommend, the other thing I absolutely recommend is that your study Bible be a hardcover. You don't want a nice leather cover for your study Bible. You want to use it like a textbook. You want to underline stuff, highlight stuff, all that. The other one would be the Collins. And both of these books, I had professors in seminary. You got the HarperCollins, didn't you? It's $80 now. So you got it at a very good time. Don't pay $80 for it. And don't pay $1,577.66. That is the, yeah, don't do that. Right now, just get the New Interpreter's Bible. Okay. That's crazy. A new one costs $1,600. That Bible? Yeah. It says right here, hardcover, $1,577.56. I mean, nobody's buying it, but that's nuts. Don't be afraid of buying a used one, but golly, just listen. CBD Calm? Okay. Oh, is that like Christian? Yeah. You can look for it anywhere, for sure. Right now, and let's admit it, I'm getting older. I'm at that horrible age where I'm stuck in my ways, and I'm sure there are perfectly fine newer study Bibles. I just know these Bibles. Like I said, or I was saying, I have seminary professors who worked on both of them. So anyway, we're going on. Then Apollonius gathered together nations in a large force from Samaria to fight against Israel. As you know, in the New Testament, the Israelites hated Samaritans. And this is probably a significant reason why. They were not just, I didn't know this. So it wasn't just that they believed differently. They had a history of being at war with them. It kind of reframes, right? I mean, the story of the Good Samaritan, the irony is lost on us. We just hear that name and we think, okay, well, there's good Samaritans, there's bad Samaritans. This was a story of one of the good ones. There was no such thing as a good Samaritan in Jesus' time, in New Testament times. They hated Samaria, but I don't think I knew ever that there was a part of that history that was embedded with being at war with them. So that should inform the way that you read those stories, especially the story of the Good Samaritan. Interesting. Okay, so Apollonius gathered together nations in a large force from Samaria to fight against Israel. When Judas learned of it, and that's Judas Maccabeus, this is, again, who we're reading about, right? Book of Maccabees, Maccabean Revolution. He went out to meet him, and he defeated and killed him. Many were wounded and fell, and the rest fled. Then they seized their spoils, and Judas took the sword of Apollonius and used it in battle for the rest of his life. That's kind of hardcore, isn't it? That's pretty cool. When Saran, the commander of the Syrian army, heard that Judas had gathered a large company, including a body of faithful soldiers who stayed with him and went out to battle, he said, "I'll make a name for myself, and I'll win honor in the kingdom. I'll make a war on Judas and his companions who scorn the king's command." And of course, the Assyrians, who would have been the people who had the Syrian army, were always at war with Israel. The history of Israel is replete with the Assyrians. I'm pretty sure Assyrians and Babylonians are the same thing. It would just be a I think more of us have heard about Babylonians. Okay, not quite the same thing, but almost. Mesopotamia was split between the Syrians and the Babylonians, but I think for all practical purposes, it's okay for you to think of them as the same thing. They were in the same geographical area, they spoke the same languages, they had the same culture, and they hated Israel. So, so this guy, Saran, wants to make a name for himself. Once again, a strong army of godless men joined him and went up to help him to take vengeance on the Israelites. Man, when God's on your side, right? When he approached the ascent of Beth Horon, Judas went out to meet him with a small company. But when he saw the army coming to meet them, they said, Judas, how can we, few as we are, fight against so great and so strong a multitude? And we're faint. We've eaten nothing today. Judas replied, and remember, he is the tactical genius, right? That is one of the reasons his father wanted him to lead the army. I think that's important too, by the way. On his deathbed, the father called the brothers around and kind of said, you'll be good at this, you'll be good at this, you'll be good at that, and you need to do this. Recognizing that maybe the person who is the tactical genius who can lead the army isn't the same person that should be in charge of administration. And I think there's wisdom in that. Paul thought there was wisdom in that too. As he wrote to the church in Corinth and other churches, the body of Christ is diverse. The eye can't say it doesn't need the foot, and the foot can't say it doesn't need the hand, and there's room for everyone. I digress a little bit. So in his tactical genius, he says, it's easy for many to be hemmed in by a few, for in the sight of heaven there is no difference between saving by many or by few. It's not on the size of the army that victory in battle depends, but strength comes from God, from heaven. They come against us in great insolence and lawlessness to destroy us and our wives and our children and to despoil us, but we fight for our lives and our laws. He himself, God, will crush them before us, as you do. Don't be afraid of them. He finished speaking, and he rushed suddenly against Saran and his army, and they were crushed before him. They pursued them down the descent of Beth Horon to the plain. 800 of them fell, and the rest fled into the land of the Philistines. Then Judas and his brothers began to be feared, and terror fell on the nations all around them. His fame reached the king, and the nations talked of the battles of Judas. All right, so now we're coming to a section called the Policy of Antiochus. When King Antiochus heard these reports, he was greatly angered, and he sent and gathered all the forces of his kingdom, a very strong army. He opened his coffers. It's a financial thing. He gave a year's pay to his forces and ordered them to be ready for any need. I'm going to tell you a story in a second. A story about the Hamilton Heights football team, which Mike Bowman will appreciate. He saw that the money in the treasury was exhausted and that the tribute payments from the country were small because of the dissension and disaster that he had caused in the land by abolishing the laws that existed from earliest days. All right, here's my Hamilton Heights story. In 1989, I was a tight end on the Westfield Shamrocks football team, and we played Hamilton Heights. We were, at the time, a small school. They were a much larger school. Not much larger, but they were a full classification larger. And it was the muddiest, rainiest game I've ever played in. And at halftime, we were soaking wet. I mean, just drenched. And our uniforms were filthy. And Hamilton Heights came out from their locker room at halftime with brand new uniforms. Dry, clean as they could be. And our coach was furious, and we were furious. And he said, I don't care whether we win or lose. When we leave this field, their uniforms are dirtier than ours. And we won the game. And it was a huge deal to beat. I mean, like, we were probably 2-8, and they were 8-2, and we beat them. And I just get that sense here, because the king gave all this money to his forces in order them to be ready for any need. He just basically gave them new uniforms and said, go take care of this. And I suspect that there was some pride in the Israelites in conquering them without those resources. Yeah, feel free to share that story with your sister, Mike. Mike's sister teaches, or did teach. Is this her last year? Anyway, she's retiring or retired, but she teaches at Hamilton Heights. Okay. So basically, people hadn't been sending their money because of the things that he did, and he worried about, Ben. Or they thought that their clean clothes made them better. He feared as he might not have such funds as he had before for his expenses and the gifts that used to give more lavishly than preceding kings. He was greatly perplexed in mind. Then he determined to go to Persia and collect the tribute payments from those regions and raise a large fund. And now, suddenly, King Antiochus has two wars to fight, right? He has this physical battle with Israel, but he's going to go to Persia and these other places and demand that they give him money. And do you think that they're going to want to give him money when they're sitting back and kind of looking at what's going on and think he might not even be king a year from now? I think he's got a much bigger battle on his hands than he suspected. Retired May 24th or retires on May 24th? All right. So he left Lysias, a distinguished man of royal lineage, in charge of the king's affairs from the river Euphrates to the borders of Egypt. Lysias was also to take care of his son Antiochus until he returned. And he turned over to Lysias half of his forces and the elephants. Man, this is good stuff. And gave him orders about all that he wanted done. As for the residents of Judea and Jerusalem, Lysias was to send a force against them to wipe out and destroy the strength of Israel and the remnant of Jerusalem. The remnant, that is the word. Every time you think of Israel, you need to think of the word remnant. It's been a remnant since the very beginning. When they escaped from Egypt as slaves, which is where our history of the Israelites begins, right? For the most part. I mean, we've got the mythology, right, in Genesis. But when you get to Exodus, I'm willing to I think that's an event that happened. I don't think it happened exactly like the book says. But I do think that the Israelites were slaves in Egypt and that they escaped and they went into the wilderness. And from that point on, they were a remnant. And that is why that is the basis of all the Levitical laws. Every law that you find in the book of Leviticus about what to eat, what not to eat, who to sleep with, who not to sleep with, some medicinal things that are in there. I mean, there's over 600 Levitical laws. Getting tattoos, although that's a different thing. That part's not. Well, it was. So anyway, all of those laws are about protecting the remnant and growing the remnant. And I think that's why when you get to New Testament times and Peter has a dream, like we talked about last week, or 2 weeks ago, when Peter has the dream where God tells him that there are no more restrictions on what they can eat. And even Jesus before that has said, it's not what goes in the body that defiles, it's what comes out. Those things are very, very connected. I think was probably a way of shifting the focus of the law from what was necessary to protect the remnant to where they were at that time. So I think that's all I'll say about that, but it's significant. The tattoo thing, if you were curious, it wasn't that getting tattoos was so unclean at the time and people were dying from it. It's that the tattoos that the majority of people were getting were to the fertility goddess. I think that would be, what are we reading? Until We Have Faces. Who's the, yeah, but the goddess. Oh, it's not the same. It doesn't matter. I have all this information in here, and sometimes I need an index. I may have just sent a comment that I didn't mean to send, but that's okay. Aphrodite. Couldn't think of it. Yeah, it's Ungut. Ungut is who it is Until We Have Faces. But the goddess that they're actually recreating in that story is Aphrodite, just based on their own pantheon. Excellent. Okay. The tattoos, they were all, almost all, the majority were tattoos to the fertility goddess so that they could have children. Remember, in those times, one of the most important things was your line, who would follow you. That's how you made your place in history. And so if anybody was infertile, they would do whatever it took to bear children. And so they would move away, as the Israelites did all the time. Before this time, we're pretty, by this time, we're monotheistic completely without fail. Almost, yeah, I'll stay with that. I think that's true. Because remember, they're conquered by the Romans, right? Who have the whole Roman pantheon of gods. But before that, what would happen is they would worship Yahweh, but then they'd hedge their bets. And they would worship this false god or this false god or that false god, the god of fertility or whatever, or the god of rain, the god of whatever they needed at the time, and say, yeah, I still really believe in Yahweh, but maybe this god can help out. It can't hurt to worship this god a little bit. And then what would happen is people would come in, like the Syrians and the Babylonians would come in and conquer current day Israel, and they would bring with them all their pantheon of gods. And it would become more normalized to worship these other people until Israel conquered them, recaptured the land, and believed in the one true God again. And then that cycle, and that is the cycle that we're talking about. That's why we're reading Maccabees, is to understand the cycle of the Israelites and understand what it means to us as, I don't know if this would be offensive to Israelites today. I don't want to say we're modern day Israelites, but we're something close to that, right? I mean, our history goes back through them. So in the same way that Methodists come from the Church of England, the Episcopal Church, I mean, we split off straight from them. Christians are from Israel. It's a shared history. And so is Islam, to a great degree. So there's a lot about the modern world. I mean, those are still the three largest religions in all of time and to this day. And so by looking at this, we will learn about ourselves. And that is why we read the Bible, right? We read the Bible to learn about God, to learn about humanity, to to learn about our relationship with God and our relationship with humanity. That's why we read the Bible. Those 4 reasons. That's why we're doing this. Okay. Yeah, Jesus was indeed, and always was Jewish. He was, obviously, I mean, goes without saying, but Jesus wasn't a Christian. He is the foundation of Christianity. John Wesley was never a Methodist. He died an Episcopal priest. Martin Luther did not become a Lutheran. None of these people wanted to leave their history behind. Rather, their history left them. And that's what happened. Okay. So he gives Lysias half of his forces and the elephants and gave him orders what he wanted done. And he was supposed to send a force to wipe out and destroy the strength of Israel and the remnant of Jerusalem. Finally, get rid of that remnant. They are a small group of people. This is literally just the Maccabean army. This is all that's left of Israel. All they had to do was kill this one person and this tiny little army, and Israel would be gone, wiped from the books of history. That's all they had to do. Everybody thought that over and over again. And I have said many times, I will say again, if you ever want proof that God is real, it's the fact that Israel still exists. Pull out the atlas, the world map, a globe, look at where they are, what they've fought against for the past 6,000 years, and look at what they do. And you cannot not believe that God is real. He was to banish the memory of them from the place, settle strangers in all of their territory, and distribute their land by lot. Then the king took the remaining half of his forces and left Antioch in his capital in the 147th year. So now we're at like 162 BC, I think. He crossed the Euphrates River and went through the upper provinces. And we're going to stop. I'd like to get through this. I would have liked to have gotten through the book, this chapter today, but we're not going to. Let me write down a note so that I'm no longer dependent on Debbie to remind me where we're at. We are at 1 Maccabees, chapter 3, verse 38. Anybody have any questions, thoughts, comments? Anybody irritated at my inability to just stay on track? That wouldn't be fun at all, right? Cheryl's ready for bed. I know, Ben, and I'm worried. I'm not ahead. I used to always be like one day ahead. I'm not. I'm reading this with you. I do research on the overall history of the chapters, and I've got notes taking me through right now through chapter 12. But I have not. I'm experiencing it with you, and so I don't know exactly what's coming next, and I'm afraid we might run across something that really needs to get deep into, so we're going to wait. All right, everybody, thank you very much. Did I shave my beard? Mike, dude, I haven't had a beard 2 years. I was at your house in August, my dude. I didn't have a beard. I mean, yeah, I shaved my beard, but like a couple years ago. All right, guys. Awesome evening. Jeff and Jill, if you're still around, blessings, our prayers go with you. And everybody, thanks for being here. I appreciate that very much. And I think that's it. So God bless, Godspeed, And as always, thanks for watching.